This is the No More Wasted Days podcast, and we're your hosts, Sarah Kaufman Bradstreet
and Heather PG. Grab your favorite NA drink and listen as we share vulnerable stories so you never feel alone on your alcohol-free journey.
And gain insights from us as we break down our most used tips and strategies that have kept us alcohol-free.
It's time to break free from wasting any more of your days to the drinking, blackout, hangover cycle.
Welcome to another episode of the No More Wasted Days podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sarah.
I'm Heather.
And today we are going to talk all about codependency. And Heather did the research on this one. So I'm going to let Heather take it away. But first, Heather, why do you think this is a really important topic for someone on their alcohol-free journey, new or if they've been on it for a while?
I think it's not talked about enough. And for me, in my career, I always associated codependency, number one, incorrectly. At first, like when I was in my 20s, I thought that it meant that you were just so codependent with someone that you couldn't do things without them. Then I started learning more about it, and it seemed like it explained why folks were drawn to people like me who had troubles with addiction. Then, when I quit drinking, I started learning more about it, and I realized that a lot of the emotional chaos that I experienced and still experience 3.5 years later has something to do with codependency.
And do you think that chaos is something you were actually trying to escape with your drinking?
Absolutely. And I didn't realize I did on some level, but I did not realize the gravity of the chaos that the drinking was actually creating. So it was just a big circle of drinking to cover up so many things. I couldn't decide what I was covering up. Yeah, I was having fun. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Like alcohol wasn't all bad. But for me, it was covering up so much. And this is one of them.
I agree. When I saw the topic, I was like, oh, this is a good one. So I hope that other people, that our listeners are excited. And I'm going to let you dive into it.
All right. Before I go into a deep dive, I want to invite y'all to follow, give us a rating and a review. It takes just like 30 seconds, and it's a way to help the podcast stay visible to help other folks. So some characteristics of codependency. Number one, caretaking as control. Now, this is beyond caretaking that Sarah, you and I do for our children, our friends, our family. A codependent person can believe that their role is so essential in maintaining the relationship by over caregiving to control the relationship. I do not think this is conscious. And this perception leads to an unhealthy cycle where your sense of purpose is solely tied to another's well-being. I think a condensed way to say this is you gauge your emotions, thoughts, feelings on another person. So that's one piece of it. Number two, the chameleon effect. Folks can morph their identities to align with those around them, or they are who they're around, right? And what that causes is you lose touch with yourself. And it's great to be adaptable, right? And when you start being a chameleon, it can seem pretty benign, but it creates a huge disconnection from your own values and desires.
And that's one, when you said that one, I'm like, oh, that's me. I'm sure I'm going to see myself in all of them because I saw myself in the first one for sure too. But the chameleon effect, I feel like when I take a little deep dive into why did I drink, why was I always drinking, a lot of it was to feel like I fit in. Oftentimes I was fitting in with the wrong people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because it could just make me feel like, oh, well, I can fit in with any crowd.
Mm-hmm.
That one for me is huge. And I do know too, like I lost my true self as a drinker. Part of that was because alcohol became my only friend, my only hobby, my job, etc.
Yeah.
But also because I just hung out with people who drank like me. That was our only commonality.
Yeah, and it takes away from your authenticity and the relationship's authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
When we are who we're around, our environment is just really key. But we'll get to that. Number three, chronic guilt. I could do a whole episode on guilt. So when we're like in this codependent mired enmeshment, we experience a lot of guilt for taking time for ourselves. Then, when we prioritize our needs, we feel selfish.
Mhm.
And this guilt can, again, trap us in this loop of self neglect. I'm still guilty of this today.
Mhm. That's one for me that I have started to recognize that I do to myself. No
Yeah.
one else no one else is thinking the things that I'm thinking, like, "Oh, everybody's mad at me because I go off to choir once a week. It really throws a wrench in the family's plans." I create that story. And when I stop and look at it, I'm like, "Whoa, you're making all of this up." Or even the idea sometimes that I can't chill and just do what I want to for the day, and I have to become a little bit of a bitch to feel like that's how I lash out finally and I say, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna do what I wanna do," type thing, and I never needed to. Like, I am so starting to see that about myself, and it is definitely when I hear codependency, I'm like, "Oh, Ryan and I definitely have a codependent relationship." A lot of it is that we live in a very small town. We work together with 2 different jobs, so it is like we're together a lot. We enjoy each other a lot, but sometimes we can get a little stuck, and we have to both kinda go, "Okay, it's time to break free." I think he does a better job at just being like, "Okay, I'm gonna go do this thing," and when I do it, I have to make this big ta-da about it, or like we were talking about on the people pleasing thing, I have
Right.
to, like, dose it out a little bit to him, which I don't need to, which
Right.
I've been working on, and it's working, and I'm feeling so much better about it.
Right. It's like your internal battle that is quiet all of a sudden becomes, well, like, I need a break or "Ah, da, 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 da. I cook for all y'all. And nobody was having the battle but me.
Exactly. I'm in that all the time.
So, number 4, emotional invisibility. This makes me sad. It's when folks struggle to express their feelings, fearing that being vulnerable might lead to rejection. And when you're silent like that, it can cause emotional isolation. And I feel like I struggled so much with emotions that if you're not safe with your own emotions, you're probably not a safe space for others. I think that's why it makes me sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that one makes sense to me too. And I am a person who I don't like my big emotions. I don't like how they feel for me. There's something I've had to learn how to embrace. And I think because I don't like them, I've tried to hide them from myself.
Yeah.
And then that was definitely, oh my gosh, I totally covered my emotions with alcohol. And that was one of the when I first quit. And when you say walking around like a raw nerve,
Oh my God.
yes. Like, why am I crying? Why am I so extremely happy?
Right.
Why am I so extremely angry? Like, every emotion was just so huge, and I had to learn to stop and go, "Whoa, what is
Yes.
this?" Like, it was a big learning curve, and I
Yes.
do think I hide it from other people just because I have such a hard time managing it myself.
Right.
So, then that goes into the people pleasing of, well, I don't wanna put that on other people too.
It's a
This
whole
goes perfect with our
right?
past topics.
It does. Number 5, I have retired from this one. Rescue complex. I'm letting the listeners know I retired.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, rescue complex is a strong urge to save, air quotes, others. It can be the hallmark of codependency.
Mhm.
F my life. I have had like rescue complex my entire life. And the mindset creates a savior mentality, which I don't want to admit, let alone to the world. But my point is to like help others, right? Not in a rescue complex. I'm not going to rescue y'all. Here's the difference. So with that savior mentality, that's where like codependent folks derive their sense of worth in fixing others' issues.
Mhm. This one is so big with people like you and I too, where we do this podcast so we can help others.
Hmm.
We share our stories so we can help others, but it has to go into then this idea that it's almost a selfless act
Selfless.
that
Hmm.
or that it's an act of service type
Yes.
thing. And
Yes.
instead of saying, I'm going to do this, and if this person doesn't take this help the way I want them to, I'm going to get really angry. And that's something I have to check myself with.
Yeah. And if you look, listeners, I want you to look back to like your friends, your partners. Are you constantly trying to fix or save someone? Just think about it. No judgment, though. Just think about it.
Yeah. I bet it's, something that's a little stronger, and our male listeners can tell me if I'm wrong, but something that's a little stronger with women too, just that maternal instinct, if that's what you wanna call it. I don't know if that's really what it is, but even, like, this morning, my daughter couldn't find her bag, which happens at least 2 to 3 times a week, so 2 to 3 of the 5 school mornings, she can't find her bag. That's, like that is her, like, comfort bag that she just wears everywhere, so I'm like, "How the hell do you lose this thing all the time?"
Right.
But it was like this, all of a sudden, she turned it into my problem, and I had to stop and say, "I'm not gonna help you if you're gonna talk to me in this way," and, it's like we just have this little struggle, and I see myself in that rescue complex with that kinda stuff.
Right.
And that's where I walk a fine line of going, "Well, I'm the mom." Like,
Mhm.
Ryan was looking too. We're all looking and trying to figure it out. But you just kinda go back and forth of, "Am I just trying to rescue someone right here, or am I trying to help? Is this my job?" That type of thing. So how do
Right.
you navigate that when you are feeling like it's something you just need to do?
Think in adult relationships, friends or partners, what I would suggest is think about why you're doing it or why you have the propensity to do it. And then, kind of get some data, like look at your past. If you're a chronic savior, like myself, you need to do a little work on that
Yeah.
because it gives like a false sense of worth. So that would indicate to me there's like a worthiness wound. Then you teach yourself that you can't trust anybody to do anything because you've taught that person learned helplessness. They don't know
Mhm.
how to do anything. Then you're mad at them because they don't know how to do the things when you do the things because you come in to save.
Yeah.
I think how you check yourself is like, why am I doing this? What is my intention? What is the result that I am looking for? If you want to help someone, you will give them the opportunity to fail. If you want to like come in and save, failure's probably not on your radar for that.
Okay. I like that idea of the if you wanna help them so if you wanna help someone, let them have the opportunity to fail. I think that's a big one for parents too, because it's hard.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it's hard when you can just figure it out. You can go find the damn bag, which I did, everybody, which is
Right.
where I told her it was the first time.
And just think about like, when you're thinking about like, this isn't mine or this is not my project or this person is not my project. And look at your history. That'll tell you a lot.
Yeah, I like that too. Thank you for that explanation.
So, further looking at what causes codependency, it often starts in early childhood, particularly in dysfunctional families. That's usually marked by emotional neglect, unpredictability, or addiction. And the early experiences shape your beliefs about love and self worth. And you condition yourself, not consciously, to prioritize other over yourself. It's kind of almost like a early onset avoidance of self. So, and lucky for me, my fun statistic for social workers, like 75% of us are from dysfunctional families. So we're just set up over here
That is so interesting.
to be the savior. Damn it.
And I often, as I work with people, the majority of people I work with are women. I do work with some men, but I work with women that are teachers, social workers, or
Nurses.
nurses.
Yep.
Yep. It really is that it's first of all, they're all female dominated careers. So as a female feeling like in the patriarchal society, it's an easy place to land, right? It's in a good spot for you to go because you see other females doing it. So there's already that conditioning from our society. But second, I really do think that there is so much of us like, well, I like to help people. And when people would ask me, why do you want to be a teacher? Because I want to help kids.
Yep.
Like that was always my first thing. And they would teach us, like, don't say because I like kids. That's not going to be like, I like
Right.
working with kids. So I changed it to like, well, I want to help kids develop a love for music and for me, like, "Oh, music saved me and it can save other people," type thing, and it gets you stuck when that is your whole identity.
Identity. Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about codependency and alcohol specifically. And I made some comparisons of drinkers and non drinkers. This is a pretty vague category. And as I said earlier, I just didn't know a lot about it. And I wanted to research like what's the difference between me as a drinker and me as a non drinker. So codependency It does play a different role in the dynamics of addiction. So drinkers, the codependent behaviors can intensify the emotional chaos of alcohol use that amplifies the feelings of inadequacy and guilt. So with this dynamic, it's a coping mechanism that complicates the codependent dynamic. And again, it's that cycle of enabling and self-neglect. So then in non-drinkers, codependency can manifest through different channels, such as over-involvement in others' lives or being a workaholic. And it's worth noting that the absence of alcohol and other drugs may reduce the immediate chaos, but the underlying patterns of neglecting your own needs are still there.
Okay.
So it kind of goes along with my theory that alcohol is like 10% of the problem. And then the 90% is all this underlying stuff.
Yeah. And the 10% of the problem with alcohol is that it was covering all the
Right.
other 90%.
Right.
So it's kind of funny when you say like, I had 99 problems and I solved most of them by quitting drinking. It's not necessarily, it's a funny saying and it is clever. And I do feel like when I was brand new to my alcohol-free journey, you're very much in that wow state. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, feelings. Oh shit, I'm codependent. I'm a people pleaser.
Right.
But now you have a clear mind to actually navigate all this. So it's not all like, "Oh my god, we'll just quit now then." No, it's like now you can actually do the work and do it wholeheartedly, which is so important.
Yeah. I think the 10% for me is it's ragingly addictive and you can lose your kids and kill yourself and, all the bad, awful things that it does. And then the
Yeah.
90% is the work
Mhm.
and it's worth it.
Yeah, and I always say the work is kind of fun.
It
Like,
is.
it's not like you're going to a job, it's that you
Mm-hmm.
don't like. It's like you get to uncover yourself and discover yourself, and even if you find out some things that you're like, "Oh, I don't like that." Well, now you have the power to change it, and that is cool.
That is so cool. So, before we go into strategies on how to free or start to free ourselves from codependency, check out the link in the show notes for the day makers and one on one coaching. I've got some spots available. And this topic is something that me and my one on one clients talk about all the time. And we can mire out like people pleasing and codependency. How are they different? How do we make a goal, a smart goal to help this? So, check it out.
I think it's a really cool thing to do, and especially if you are feeling like you just can't pinpoint this stuff, then it's worth doing either of the options and saying, "Okay, well, I'm gonna really take a deep dive and let some other people look at it from an outsider standpoint and help me out." So check it out.
So, some strategies to break free. Number one, embrace authenticity. Now, this is not easy. How you do that is you need to reconnect with yourself. The number one way to do that is not drink, in my opinion, or not, don't drink 4 bottles of wine a day. You're going to be so disconnected, you're not going to know your name. So, cut out that huge portion of toxicity. Do some journaling, like free writing, a brain dump, practice mindfulness, and do something creative that can uncover what you like. Me and my one on one clients talk about creativity a lot, and it doesn't have to be making wedding dresses, it can be any form of creativity, any form, because that gets you into your desires and values that have been overshadowed by codependency.
The one thing I like is that it says cultivate a practice of self-discovery, which means it's something you're always working on. And it's just such a big thing. Who am I? Who
Yes,
who am I really? Well, the cool thing about us and the hard thing about us as humans is we're always changing.
right.
But if you've got this practice in place, you start to see those changes and you start to see patterns in yourself. And it's a pretty neat thing to do.
Yeah. And think about like, I quit drinking when I was 40 and I'll be
Mhm.
45 soon. So that's 5 years.
Yeah.
I quit drinking when I was 41. Anyway, from 40 to 45, there's so many changes in your life. Like
Mhm.
there's always an opportunity for self-discovery.
Yes.
And number two, I think this might be my favorite thing ever. Like Sarah's meditation, boundary boot camp.
I love it.
I just
Going to
like,
boundary boot camp. Here we go.
where are you going, Heather? Boundary boot camp for the holidays, y'all. So this is so key in codependency and alcohol-free life and your whole anybody's life. So you want to approach boundary setting as a skill to be developed. You are not going to learn boundaries overnight, I can promise you, because if you could, I would have, and I didn't. So start small. Practice saying no. That will build your confidence in asserting your needs. Number 3, frame self care. Shift your perspective on self care from being a luxury to a necessity.
Yes.
Engage in activities that recharge your spirit, like hobbies, nature, walks, and simply just enjoying quiet moments alone. It doesn't have to be an hour, it doesn't have to be 5 minutes, just some quiet time.
Yeah.
And I still have to work on this, guilty. And we have to reframe it as a need because you cannot pour from an empty cup. I've also tried that
Mhm.
too, it doesn't work.
Oh, yeah. No, self-care definitely is something that's hard for us codependent people or people-pleasing people
Right,
because it is something where you just, "Oh, I'm not gonna do that thing today that I know really helps take care of myself because it's gonna just cause an issue. It's gonna make it harder for everybody else," which is such a story that we tell ourselves that is a lie. So, take care of yourself.
and thanks to one of the Day Makers members, I now have a joy journal
Ooh.
and is incorporated as a necessity in my nighttime routine. And for folks who are curious, a joy/junk journal, just a journal, you get some stickers and you decorate it however you want and you write whatever you want. It could be inspired by the sticker, your favorite quote, your gratitude. What I like about it is it's creative. And I love Wednesday Adams. So she's in my junk joy journal. And it's so cool. What just seeing the sticker inspires me to write.
Yeah.
And it could be, I wrote about crows the other day. I've never wrote about crows a day in my life, but it was helpful in terms of taking care of myself. I was out of my head in more of a poetry space, which I am no poet. So try to reframe it like that. If y'all try a junk journal or do that, let us know because I want to hear more about it and learn more about it.
I've wanted to do it since everybody's been talking about it because it's how I journaled in high school. So when everybody was talking about it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's what I did. It has a name. Look at that." Where sometimes it was random poetry. That was terrible, everybody. So,
You're right. It's like
but
my
or
crow
just
poetry. It's not
yeah,
good, but
right?
it was fun.
It was fun. And it gets, I don't know, it just really gets those creative juices flowing. And, you don't have to be the best at things just to enjoy it. And
Right.
I would draw in it, and I really am like, "Okay, maybe I need to do this."
This is your sign.
I know. It's like, okay. And I know it's a hot topic right now on the day makers, but now I'm like, "All right, she mentioned it again,
Mhm.
and I've admitted that it's something I've already done in my life, so why not?" Maybe it's I have this thing where I'm like, "Well, I have so many journals laying around." I'm like, "Who cares? Who cares?"
I got mine at a store called Five Below. It was $2.50. It has gold bananas on it. I mean,
Exactly.
it's fun. It brings me joy just to see it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, all I need to get is one of those composition books. Those are like well, they're probably more than a buck 50 now, but they don't cost a lot. Just order one and have some fun with it.
Yeah. And the last one, join a community. For codependency, I think for anything, self-improvement and codependency in community, you can really work on your self-worth in
Mhm.
spaces of those with like minds. You get a sense of belonging, accountability.
Yes.
There's also Codependents Anonymous that have online meetings and in-person meetings that are structured similarly to AA, with the primary focus being codependency. And you can work with your therapist. I am no therapist, but I help with my clients with this. So, get in the community. And if you really feel like this touches you, talk to somebody one on one about it. That
Yeah.
would be my suggestion.
Community is so helpful, and I think the cool thing is there's so many options out there now because I know I was working with a one-on-one health and fitness coach. It was a good fit personality-wise. It was not a good fit for the amount of work I could put out at this point in my life. Like, I felt like I
Mhm.
was not getting enough out of it, but she has a community. So I joined that, and I'm starting to see like, oh, I'm more of a community-driven person anyway, because when I'm having an issue, it is so nice to go in. This morning I went in and was like, "All right, I just gotta lay this out there. I am starting to sneak eat again," which is a pattern that I have where stop and get some Cheetos and a Snickers bar. It's a really good combination, everybody. But it's one of those things where I buy it on a different card so no one will even see that I bought this food. I eat it when I know no one's going to be around. I used to go out of my way to put it in a trash can that no one would see, but now I figured out that nobody looks in our trash except for me. So that was a step I was taking too far. But I was like, "Oh my gosh, this I hate this behavior in myself. It's very addictive. It's very addictive personality, and that's one of the reasons I don't like it." But to be able to write it in the group and then have other women say, "I do this too. I do this too." It didn't fix the problem, but it made it so, "Oh my gosh, I'm not alone in this. This thing that I think is really naughty and I don't shameful." And to hear other people say, "I do this," and then to have the coach of the group facilitator walk you through some ideas and tips and strategies. It's
Mhm.
very, very helpful. So to find out that there's a Codependents Anonymous,
Mhm.
that is so cool. There's a
Yeah.
group for everything, you guys.
And if you're like me, you might do well in a group and one-on-one because I have to have both.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really valuable. You'll find your people.
Mhm.
So to kind of wrap this up, it's really codependency is really multifaceted and it takes a big toll on your emotional health and your relationships. I think by understanding it a little bit more and developing some strategies to address it, you can start to reclaim your identity, have healthier
Yeah.
relationships, and then we'll get to thrive because we're not drinking, we're doing the things, we're in community, we're meeting people, we're less isolated from ourselves and others. So
Yeah. I loved this. Thank you so much for sharing all of this.
you're welcome.
It is something that other people need to hear for sure, because like I said, you're never alone in these things that you feel. And when
No,
you are saying, I think I'm kind of codependent, guess what? You're not the only one. And now
right.
you're finding that community even within the podcast. So that's very cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to invite y'all to check out the links again. And Sarah always puts the links to our social media. So check out the share notes and share this with a friend if it resonates. And I want to say this person doesn't have to be a drinker to benefit. So, all right. Bye, y'all.